Get my note back, Richard.
Awesome. Okay, well, this is Coach Naomi, and I have Giovanni here with me, helping me, and we're going to be reviewing 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Okay, the section titles in that section are The Day of the Lord and also Final Instructions. So we're working right now in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, section titled The Day of the Lord. And we're going to start reading in verse number 1. Now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates we do not need to write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Okay, so let's analyze this a little bit for a minute. Okay, we see here we've got brothers and sisters. Who is he addressing here? Brothers and sisters. Very common. We see that all throughout 1 and 2 Thessalonians, that he's addressing brothers and sisters. What is he talking to them about? Now, about times and dates. So what's he talking about now? About two things, times and dates. And what does he have to say about the times and dates? We do not need to write to you, for you know very well. Okay? Phrase in 1 Thessalonians comes up a lot. Something that you know. Okay? In this case, it's you know very well. So a question could very well be, what do you know very well? And what's the answer? What is it that we know very well? We know that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. So how will the day of the Lord come? It will come like a thief in the night. Okay, so we see main point here, day of the Lord. And what do we know so far about it? What we know very well, day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Questions? Good? All right. Now we're going on to verse 3. While people are saying two things that the people are saying, peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. So we have a couple of lists here in this verse. What are the people saying? Peace and safety, two things. And what will happen while the people are saying peace and safety? Destruction will come on them three ways. They will come on them suddenly, as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. So, two things people are saying, peace and safety. And while they're saying peace and safety, destruction's going to come. Describe the destruction. Three things. It's coming suddenly, it's coming like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and people, or they, will not escape. Okay, so far we know day of the Lord is coming like a thief in the night. People are saying two things, peace and safety. Destruction will come suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. Okay, let's talk about verse 4. Brothers and sisters, again, brothers and sisters is coming up. You are not in darkness, so this day should surprise you like a thief. Pretty self-explanatory. We're talking about, again, still talking about the day of the Lord. Okay, and he's talking now about the brothers and sisters, as opposed to the people that are saying peace and safety. The brothers and sisters are not in darkness. This day will not surprise you like a thief. Going on to 5. You are all children of the light and children of the day. Two things that the brothers and sisters that he's addressing are children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. So there's two things that they all are, children of the light and children of the day, and two things that they do not belong to, the night or to the darkness. Okay, we're up to verse 5. We good on that? Mm-hmm. Okay. And we're picking up with verse number 6. So then, let us not be like the others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. Okay, so this is again another contrast, just like we saw in verse 5, what you all are, children of the light and children of the day, and what you do not belong to, night and darkness. What we are to be like, we are not to be like, you are not to be like the others who are asleep, but you are to be two things, awake and sober. Okay, so the others, we have kind of two descriptions of others. Going backwards, the others are the ones that we are not to be like. And why? What are these others? They are asleep. Okay, but what we are to be is two things: awake and sober. Okay, let's just review those contrasts. Okay, the brothers and sisters are not in darkness, so this day should not surprise you. Why? Because you are all children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night and the darkness. Two things we are: of the light of the day. We are not belong to night and darkness. And again, we go, this time it's flipped. The not is first. We are not like the others who are asleep. Instead, we are awake and sober. Those could definitely be a lot of two-part questions in there. Verse 7, for those who sleep, sleep at night. Those who get drunk at night. So we're continuing to explain about why should we be awake and sober rather than asleep like the others. Why? Because what happens at night? Okay, there's two things that are happening at night here. Those who sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. What two things happen in the night? People sleep, people get drunk. And that's why we are not to be like the others asleep, but awake and sober, because we're children of the light and children of the day, not belonging to the night and the darkness. Okay, we had just one more point that Javanya raised. It's a good point. It says, for those who sleep at night. And this is not really talking about physical sleep. It's not telling us we should never sleep physically. It's talking about sleeping spiritually. Because those who are asleep, when you sleep, something can come and surprise you. Okay, of course we sleep physically, but spiritually we need to always be awake and sober. Why? Because the day of the Lord is coming, so we need to be alert and ready for it spiritually. It's not saying never sleep physically. This is talking spiritually. We should not be asleep. Okay, we're going to go on to verse 8. Okay, verse 8 is continuing the contrast between day and night. Okay, but since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as the breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. Okay, so notice what it says. Okay, it says down here, we are children of the light and children of the day, back in verse 5. Okay, and it says we do not be like the others we do not belong to the night or to the darkness, but we do belong to the day. That could be a two-part question. What do we not belong to, the night or the darkness? What do we do belong to, the day? Okay, let us be sober, just like it mentioned back in verse 6. Let us be awake and sober. In verse 8, it's telling us, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as a breastplate. So two things we should be, because we belong to the day. We should be sober and put on faith and love as a breastplate. Two things we put on as a breastplate: faith and love, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. The third thing that we need to do because we belong to the day: be sober and put on two things: the faith and love as a breastplate, hope of salvation as a helmet. Okay, so be sober, and you're putting on a breastplate, which is faith and love, and a helmet, which is hope of salvation. Okay, and all of that we're doing because we belong to the day. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, so again, we keep explaining, why do we need to belong to the day, be awake and sober, put on this breastplate of faith and love, this helmet, hope of salvation. Why? Because God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. All of those people who are asleep, sleeping at night, getting drunk at night, those are not people that God has appointed, that God has appointed not to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation. Those of us belonging to the day who've put our faith in Jesus, God appointed us not to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. So that's a contrast. What did God not appoint us to? And what did He appoint us to? Not to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. Continuing to verse 10, He died for us so that, whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with Him. Okay, now we're changing our metaphor a little bit. Okay, He mentioned through our Lord, we're receiving salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. How are we receiving salvation? Why? Because He died for us. So that, whether we are awake or asleep, notice the contrast, two ways. He died for us so that whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with Him. So when could we live together with Him? Whether we're awake or asleep. Now, they're changing their metaphor a little bit. This is not saying that it's okay for us to be asleep spiritually, like He was telling us back in verse 6. Do not be like the others who are asleep. Over here He's saying whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with Him. He's changing his metaphor a little bit. He's not talking here about being asleep spiritually like he was back in 6, where he was telling us don't do that. Asleep here is talking about dying. Being awake, being alive, being asleep, being dead. Oftentimes Paul uses being asleep as a metaphor for death. So whether we're alive, awake, or whether we've died, asleep, we may live together with Him. No matter what, whether we're alive or whether we're dead, we're going to live together with Jesus. He died for us so that, whether we are awake or asleep, we may do what? Live together with Him. Final verse in this section, therefore, summing the whole thing up, because of all of this, because we're not from the night but from the day, because we're going to be awake and sober, because Jesus did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation, because He died for us, so that no matter what, whether we're awake or asleep, we live together with Him. Therefore, because of all of that, do two things. Encourage one another and build one another up. Two things we should do. Because Jesus died for us, we should encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing.